I just want to say that if this is all that's going to be left of Dr. Ben Carson's legacy, he's going out bad. He's going out bad.
I'm the librarian, and I came to read.
Hey girls, I had to make this a whole separate video because, you know, as much we've had a lot of fun. For the past X amount of years, we've had so much fun dragging and reading Dr. Ben Carson because he continues to make a fool of himself on the political world stage. But for this video, I just wanted to sit back and take a look at his legacy and the history that he's had, at least within a large part of the black community. And I can say that for like older black people, like my parents, people like that, they have been so inspired by his story. They had us all reading The Gifted Hands and all this. We knew Dr. Ben Carson came from poverty, and he was able to, you know, with all his studies and his intelligence, he was able, and the help of his mama, who I'll talk about a little bit later, he was able to rise to this well-known neurosurgeon, all this. It was an inspirational story, especially when you're talking about blackness and black people who come from poverty and stuff. So when you take that story, you take that man, you take that image, you take that inspiration, and then you water it down with all this bullshit, this white supremacy that he's allowed himself to be a slave to, especially when it comes to the White House. When you take all of the things that he's doing, which I'll speak about a little bit later, it's just like a complete 180-degree turn. It's just a complete abandoning of what we all knew him to be. And I think that's why it stings a little bit harder than other politicians, because it's like, God damn, all of our black ass mamas and grandmas all talked about the gifted hands and all, you know, this amazing ass person who came up from basically nothing and was able to become this famous ass surgeon. You know, and he has literally turned around and shit on all of that. And that, I think, is one of the most disheartening things about this whole situation. Let's first start talking about Ben Carson's mother, Sonja Carson. She was one of, I think she had 24 siblings. So she had 20-something siblings. She didn't know half of them. She was born into poverty, and there was this kind of idea that Ben Carson grew up in public housing, right? But I did some research, and apparently that's not the case. He grew up apparently in subsidized housing. Either way, Sonja Carson, Ben Carson's mother, had to work 3 goddamn jobs. I mean, he said that there were times where she would leave the house at 5 a.m. and not come back until like 12 midnight, okay? She had to work 3 goddamn jobs in order to stay out of public housing, but they were still in subsidized housing, and that's according to, now this from USA Today, that's according to Armstrong Williams, and that's his longtime like advisor or friend or whatever. He went up there onto NPR one time and he said that Ben Carson's life growing up in subsidized housing, you know, growing up in poor communities, that helps him understand housing programs. I guess that happened around the time that it was being announced that this man was going to take over the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So, I mean, I guess that this whole idea, maybe that idea that he used to live in public housing, even though it was subsidized housing, maybe some people wanted to turn that into his talking points. I didn't personally hear him say that that's one of the reasons why he would be great in this position. I heard other people reference that he grew up in poorer communities and that's why he's a good pick or whatever. These are people defending him. I've never heard those words come from his mouth. So either way, we all understand, we all knew that Dr. Ben Carson grew up in poorer communities. We understand that he grew up in subsidized housing, even though I'm sure that he knew friends and family members who grew up in public housing. So for him to now get up into this position, this secretary position of urban development, housing and urban development, and just completely shit on anyone who's low income or it doesn't make any sense, because if half of these social programs were not in place, Ben Carson, your ass would not be able to have, there would be no social mobility for your ass, you know? And you can diminish these programs as much as you want to, but it does not erase the fact that without a home, without food, without a safe community that's built with some type of infrastructure, can't nobody do a goddamn thing. You know what I mean? Can't nobody do shit. So I don't understand how these people, they love to talk about success stories and all this bullshit. Oh, look how he pulled himself up from his bootstraps. What's y'all excuse? But then y'all taking away people's boots and they bootstraps. So how the hell they supposed to get up there anyway? And what I understand and what we all know is that y'all don't want them up there. Y'all don't want social mobility. You want to keep the powers that be as they are. And that's why these people are struggling. Now, like I said, we all know that you and your family, your mama, your everybody, your classmates, people who are around you benefited from, at least in some way, in some part, these social programs. And even if you're going to bring up the fact that, oh, my mama worked 3 and 4 and 5 jobs to stay away from public housing, the whole idea is the fact that nobody on this planet should have to do that shit. If there are ways to prevent this shit, no one should have to do that shit, okay? And what I find crazy is that no matter how many public assistance programs you or your people came up with and came up because of, here your ass is defending this administration's cuts. And I'm talking about these cuts. These cuts are ridiculous. This is from Politico. I'm going to read some of the cuts that this administration is proposing when it comes to this type of budget. Okay, the administration is basically, I saw that they literally eliminate whole funds, like they eliminated whole programs. This is what they're trying to do. So the administration is basically trying to cut out spending on affordable housing and community development. They're going to try and rely on more and more private mortgage lenders to set up some shit within the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I don't understand it. So the proposed cuts, they're trying to take away $3 billion from the Community Development Block Grant Program. I mean, these programs, they don't just benefit low and moderate income communities. They also support projects like building roads, building sewers, improving on the already horrible situations when it comes to housing. Not only that, but that there are not enough units available for people who need them. That's the first thing. So I don't understand how you see a problem. There are very clear problems and you're cutting it from the damn budget. And then on top of that, it takes away, Politico said it zeroes out choice neighborhood revitalization grants, home investment partnerships, which according to them leverages private funds to expand the supply of affordable housing. They're saying that they would also cut rental assistance to tenants by $974 million. Also reduce spending on Section 8. So, of course, rightfully so, and like I said, we all know that you came from a poorer community. It was only because of help in this cruel ass world, help and assistance, and people banding together in public assistance, that you were able to, many other people were able to see themselves outside of that situation and finally live the life that they want to outside of it. So for you to have this lack, you and the administration to have this lack of compassion, it's so cruel. It is so cruel for you all to take away whole funds, delete whole programs that help such a huge majority of people. I don't understand it. And then so as we see these proposed cuts and things that would damage, I'm talking about if you take away whole programs that people were relying on just the year before, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? It's going to be chaos, as it continues to be, as it always was when it comes to this administration. And of course administrations in the past, but girl, this one, my eyes are open, sis, So when we see all that shit, we see the damage that it's going to do to the population. We call your ass up there. That's what they said. So on Tuesday, you had an appearance. You had to come before the House Financial Services Committee and defend basically these budget cuts, this proposed budget that this administration brought up and that you brought up with the HUD. So Katie Porter first grilled your ass and was just like, sis, what's going on with Oreos? And of course she went on, she had to go on to explain it because your ass didn't know what it was. And I'm just like, you are literally this fucking secretary. How do you not know these things? What is going on? I cannot imagine for the life of me that your mother, who was born like 24 siblings, had I think she had like a 3rd grade education, basically made her illiterate. I can't imagine that she would be happy about how these policies will affect people who were just like her. Yeah, I can't imagine that she would be happy about that shit. But here you are. You're acting like a snob. Like I said, when Katie Porter got your ass in front of there and she said, what's going on with the FHA loans? Like, it's too many of them going into REOs as compared to the GSEs. Now, FHA, I think it's Federal Housing Administration loan, and a GSE is government-sponsored enterprise loans. She was basically making a difference, like, why are these loans defaulting and going into foreclosure versus these types of loans? And Ben Carson didn't even know what REOs was. He's real estate organization. She was like, no, real estate owns, that means they were foreclosed, okay? He said, REOs, you mean Oreos? And to me, it's just, he looked like such a snob, and that was not, he looked like such a callous asshole, and just so proud of how much of a fucking dipshit douchebag he could be to people looking for answers for their constituents who are literally it's life or death for these people, and he's just talking about some goddamn Oreos. Ayanna Pressley also had to drag the shit out of Ben Carson in this hearing. He was like, girl, you know the answer to that question when she asked for yes or no. It was literally that ridiculous. Apparently he was also asked about OMWI, and that was the Office of Minority and Women women inclusion, and he was just looking like Scooby-Doo. Oh, you know, he just didn't know what the fuck was going on. And you know, it's one thing to not know shit and not know how to do your goddamn job, but it's another thing to get up in front of people who are trying to make sure that the population is protected, and to get up there and act like a complete asshole and just like, oh well girl, like why you bothered? You should know the answer to that question. And then he wanted to say reclaiming my time as if he was in control of the meeting in general. It was just so disrespectful. Not only that, after that he put up these pictures and of course directed it towards Katie, who was doing nothing but her goddamn job, making sure that he was held accountable for how these policies would affect the population, okay? And he just continues to be the asswipe, you know what I mean, the disintegrating piece of toilet paper that he's constructed like in the goddamn face. It is so disheartening. It's so upsetting. It would be one thing if it was just like some random weirdo politician that we could all drag. But you know, I've been dragging Ben Carson. I'll continue to do it, but I just wanted to make this video to be like, sis, you really have shat on your legacy. Like, you have really destroyed it. And the way that the human body works, sis, you ain't gonna live for no fucking 80 more years, sis. Do you really wanna pass the fuck away? Like, do you wanna really disintegrate into ash and dust like I'm watching Infinity War and this is what's left of your goddamn legacy? Really, sis? And it's not even like something happened and you fucked up. You did this all by yourself? Girl, it's disgusting, sis. It's really gross. I mean, Ayanna Presley asked you if you would put your grandmother, would you put your grandmother in these public housing units? Would you put your grandmother in there? And all you could do was smile and laugh like a bumbling idiot, a sarcastic ass idiot in her goddamn face. Let me tell you something, Ben Carson, the way that things are going, it doesn't seem like your hands are that goddamn gifted, and it does not take a goddamn brain surgeon to understand that poor people still need homes as well, okay? Now, I don't know if your eyes should both come out of the sunken place first, or if you as a person as a whole should come out of the sunken place first, but I know that whenever they both happen, I will finally be able to have a good goddamn evening.